The Spanish Civil War by Clara, Naira, Laura, and Silvia. Chapter 1. A Divided Society. Spain before 1931. In Spain, it was thought that political problems were solved with violence instead of debating. On one hand, presided by the progressist bourgeoisie, the reform forces. On the other hand, the reaction forces were formed by the old oligarchies landlords. Spain lost the Cuban colonies and it started the Spanish-American War. The monarchy was restored with Alfonso XII, and there were two main political parties, the Conservatives, under Antonio Cánovas del Castillo, and the Liberals, under Mateo Praxe de Sagasta. There were a lot of electoral manipulation with caciquismo. Cánovas del Castillo was then assassinated by a young Italian anarchist in 1897. Another Republican movement, led by Alejandro Lerroux, threatened the system. He became the parallel emperor in a poor district of Barcelona. After several unrests caused by the shortage of bread, the socialist UGT and the anarcho-syndicalists CNT joined for having new elections. In 1923, the general Miguel Primo de Rivera attempted a coup d'état under the king's approval. Then he resigned in 1930. Chapter 2. The Challenge of the Left Wing, from 1931 to 1933. With the arrival of the Second Republic, the power passed to the moderate left wing for the first time of the oligarchy. A provisional government assumed the power. It was led by Niceto Alcalá Zamora, Miguel Maura, Alejandro Lerroux, and Manuel Azaña, among others. The 14th of April, the Colonel Macià, leader of the Republican Esquerra of Catalonia, declared an independent Catalan Republic. Then, a delegation of Madrid led them a statute of autonomy. In 1931, the democratic, secular, reformist, and liberal constitution was approved. The elections of 19th November 1933 were the first ones in which the women could vote. The electoral results meant a large defeat for the socialists that only obtained 58 seats. Then the radicals and the CEDA, led by Gil Robles, joined for a new government, the Conservative Biennium.
Chapter 3. Confrontation and Conspiracy, 1934-1936. Alejandro Lerroux was named president, but as the radical depend of CEDA, they were like puppets. There were a lot of revolts in Barcelona, Madrid, and Valencia. It still were a lot of tension between the left and the right wing. The CEDA convoced a big concentration of his young movement called the Juventudes de Acción Popular, GAP. Then the army of officers loyal to the Republic were expelled and new positions of responsibility were held. Francisco Franco, Chief of General Staff, Joaquín Fanjul, Undersecretary of War, and Manuel Godet, Inspector General. In 1936, the war started with the Republic on disadvantage, as the revolt was in favor of the nationalists in Morocco. Chapter 4. The map of Spain is bleeding. From the coup d'état to the civil war, Seville fell into the hands of the General Gonzalo Queipo de Llano. After the fight against Mola's forces in Sierra de Guadarrama, Azaña called Diego Martínez Barrio, a moderate Republican from the center, with the mission of forming a coalition government to negotiate the rebels. Then Sanjurjo, Fanjul, and Manuel Godet died in a plane crash. For now, the most important Republican cities were Bilbao, Barcelona, Madrid, Valencia, and Málaga. Between July 25 and 27, Mussolini was determined to offer support to the nationalists, although it was not until July 28 that they signed it and sent troops. During the month of August and September, the nationalists notably concealed their positions. José Enrique Varela managed to connect Seville, Córdoba, Granada, and Cádiz. On October 15, the Soviet Union began to bring weapons to the Republic.
Chapter 5. Behind the Gentleman Pact, the great powers betray Spain. Gil Robles based most of the CEDA propaganda in Nazi studies when he traveled to Nuremberg. As well, the Renovación Española and the Carlists maintained close relations with the Italian fascists, seeing clearly that Mussolini and also Hitler approved their politics against the left and communism, meaning a huge help in the war by bringing air airplanes, which made the revolutionaries win. As well, British conservative government and the higher classes supported the nationalists, and with the no intervention politic, the UK didn't have to legitimately sell weapons to the Republicans. Nevertheless, Churchill said that they should stay neutral. In April 1938, an English-Italian pact signed by Chamberlain made the Italian troops stay in Spain. Clement Attlee, leader of the deputies of the Labourist Party, Anne Bevan, stand for Cripps, or Ernest Bevin, leader of the Transport and General Workers' Union, all supported the Republic. But not only high-ranking people, as well lots of British people helped Republican Spain by being part of the international brigades. The United States didn't have a lot of strategical interests, keeping neutral as a state, but the financial world and the church of those countries supported Franco's side. However, the Third Reich did have essential interests to weaken the French and English democracies and make them see how dangerous the communism and the friendship with them can be, thus helping the military rebels in a discreet way. On the complete other side, relationships with the Soviet Union have been established since 1933, so he made some pacts with the UK and France and studied help, with some doubt, the Republic. After seeing that the fascists were helping the other side, he wanted a communist-minded Spain to win, being a border country with one of their allies, France. So he sent over 150,000 people to help the left. But even though he didn't want the fascists to win, a complete victory of the revolutionary left wing could have some impact in the minds of the French people, meaning that while they did help, they were very strict. The Spanish Civil War was no more than the playground to practice what the World War II was going to be. Spain didn't matter, it was just a puppet. Chapter 6. Madrid is the heart, the central epos. Germans, Italians, Portuguese Viriatos, anti-Bolshevik Russians, French, Romanians, extreme right fascists, and Catholics all around Europe helped the nationalist side, but the squad with most fame was under Eoin O'Duffy, an Irish general. By the Republican side, most of the people didn't have any war experience and organized in militias. Anarchists and communists fought inside the same purpose, the Republic. Franco only had to get a last city, Talavera de la Reina, before getting Madrid. The nationalist advance made clear the weakness of the Frente Popular. The 4th September, a real Frente de Popular government was presided by Largo Caballero and 4 CNT people, but they all left to Valencia after believing that the rebels could take Madrid, and most of the people were in contact with this decision. José Miaja was then in charge of Madrid defense, and luckily for them, Franco took longer so they could get more help from the Soviet Union and the international brigades, and they resisted their invasion. Even though they helped them, they had to put Miaja in the top. The government and the CNT were scared that the imprisoned right officials could plot, escape, and help Franco, so they ordered immediate execution. As well, José Antonio Primo de Rivera was still imprisoned. Franco didn't want to pay to rescue him, so that meant he died too. The rebels lost the battle in Madrid, and if the Republicans counterattacked, the tables might have turned. However, the left wing, suspecting the loss, gave Moscow the gold they owed them for helping them. As well, the right wing had to pay the Germans, who were less generous than the Italians. The rebels weren't going to accept the previous defeat in the capital, so they started to attack again, and after a lot of losses from both sides, but the number being higher in the Republican side, the rebels took over Madrid and won the war in 1939.
Chapter 7. The values of the movement were imposed through savage terror. As the rebels conquered new territory, members of the Popular Front parties and trade unions were assassinated by the military. These horrors were committed with the benevolent gaze of the church and carried out by the civil guard and the police. Up to 180,000 people may have lost their lives to Franco's repression. Mr. Mola's purpose was to spread terror. Women were victims of cruelty. The rebels called the women red as non-female wars. These accusations reflected to the fear of right-wing men. Women's liberation had aroused. Franco had learned to inculcate loyalty through fear. The Army of Africa suffered Frankish casualties. He had to rely on recruiting the militia, whose first allegiance was to the Phalanx and Traditionalist Communion, who had made the best contribution. The president of the National War Junta, Manuel Falconde, wanted to create a Royal Carlist military academy to train the Requete officers politically and militarily. Since he didn't ask for Franco's approval, he told him that he was leaving Spain or would face a trial for rebellion. Ramon Serrano Suñer was the mastermind behind the creation of a complete state structure. Suñer elaborated a plan together with Nicolás Franco's brother. His idea was to join the Phalanx and Traditionalist Communion. On one side of the Phalanx were the radical followers of Manuel Edilla and his successor José Antonio. Agustín Aznar and Sancho Davila led the groups of legitimes made up of friends and relatives of José Antonio. Several days later, it was announced that the leadership of the new party was headed by Franco. He was only a member of the political junta, but he rejected. On April 25, he was arrested for the attempted murder of Franco. He had a death sentence, but before that, he spent 4 years in jail. For Franco, the role of woman was a housewife and mother of Falangist warriors. Chapter 8. Political rivalries in the Republican zone continued because the Republic was still a democracy. There were far fewer generals that believed because they rebelled. Commander Eleuterio Diaz the committee to classify the officers as indifferent, Republicans, or rebels. That became the nucleus of the Popular Army. The courts of justice were replaced by revolutionary courts created by political parties and unions. After 1939, the Republicans were in polemics for the responsibility of defeats. The communists were unaware that the main weapon of the Republic was popular enthusiasm, and it was destroyed. The revolutionary position tended to ignore the national situation and the military power that the Republic was facing. The peasants quickly solved the land problem through collectivization. But the women still had to clean, take care of the children, and cook. They also held important positions in political and military organizations, but many men continued to think that they were only good for cooking and washing. In mid-March, the CNT withdrew from the Catalan government, and the beginning of May, the crisis broke out. It started with the assault of the telephone exchange in Barcelona. Street fights broke out that could have been avoided, but companies took the opportunity to continue their funds against the CNT. Largo Caballero resigned, and Azaña offered the presidency to Dr. Juan Negrin. The POM was declared illegal. Chapter 9. Mola had concentrated an army of about 40,000 combatants for the assault of the Basque country. He also had their cover from the Condor Legion. On Monday, April 26, they attacked Guernica. At the end of May, the Mola troops had Bilbao surrounded. After the fall of Bilbao, the rest of the north was quickly occupied. Franco, throughout the summer, prepared a planned offensive in Brunete, about 30 kilometers from Madrid. They managed to open an offensive, but due to the heat, General Varela managed to close it. Franco delayed his campaign in the north. After a period of calm, Franco decided to open a new attack on Madrid, but the Republicans discovered the plan through Haspen mission. Negrin was looking for a negotiating peace, but Franco would only accept an unconditional surrender. He had no interest in ending the war, so he launched another offensive in Valencia, but it didn't go as he expected. In response, Negrin organized another counter-offensive to establish the contact with Catalonia. In mid-November, the Frankists pushed the Republicans back to the starting positions. In December 1938, Franco launched the final offensive. On March 26, Franco began a great advance with almost no opposition. Chapter 10. The war ended on very different dates depending on the location. In the Republican zone, some 5,000 deaths were registered, and in the rebel zone, the majority of deaths were not registered. Thousands of people were officially judged and executed. Franco's determination to move slowly was because he thought that this guaranteed that there would never be a turning back. The more they counted, the more prisoners there were. The Franquist prison system was chaotic and improvised. Its first function was to divide the prisoners into recoverable and non recoverable, who killed them. Franco wanted autarky, and closing Spain created a black market. More exploitation was in the Valley of Fallen, which employed 20,000 workers who died or were injured. Many Spanish refugees had to work for Hitler to pay off the debt he had with Franco, but they didn't know it.